In the news this week, refugee rights activists cast off claims that asylum seekers engaged in illegal activities on Manus Island.
Also, marriage equality legislation hits federal parliament as MPs debate the bill. Plus, education cuts on the way as the government slashes jobs through voluntary redundancies.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Leung and Danielle Staniskov.
Good evening. Human rights activists has rejected allegations of detainees committing criminal offences within the recently closed Manus Island Detention Centre. This information came to light at a time when New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern renewed her offer to take up 150 refugees from Manus. Taylor Hannah reports.
Intelligence advice from Manus Island described residents allegedly engaging in shocking behaviour, such as drug dealing and sexual activities with underage girls. Sally Thompson, human rights activist, said this is not the first time the minister has made false accusations against asylum seekers.
This is yet another deflection by the minister, by Peter Dutton, to deflect from the humanitarian crisis currently happening within the old RPC on Manus.
She questioned if the accusations were true, why have there been no charges?
Most of them have refugee status, and in that process, criminal background is looked at. So these men are probably more thoroughly vetted and checked than the average Australian.
These allegations puts pressure on New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern to have up to 150 Manus asylum seekers resettled in New Zealand.
I have again reiterated New Zealand's offer is genuine. It stands at the ready. We acknowledge that whilst we're not in the same situation as Australia, we cannot ignore the human face of what we see.
Human rights activists are calling for the government to accept New Zealand's offer, but for the refugees, the future remains uncertain. Taylor Hannah, WAMN News.
The marriage equality plebiscite has been called a major win for same-sex couples, with over 60% of voters voting yes. But not everyone is supporting new legislation, with opposition among some federal MPs. Nelson Liu joins us from Parliament. And Nelson, what has made the legislation controversial?
Well, the same-sex marriage plebiscite has continued to divide the nation, with some federal government MPs choosing not to support legislation to recognise marriage equality. MPs including WA's Andrew Hastie will abstain from voting for the legislation after it was rushed into Parliament and is currently being debated. It comes as the Yes campaign secured just over 61% of the vote, giving same-sex couples the right to marry.
There might well be some electoral backlash here against those people, and whether it's enough to cause them to lose their seats. I mean, in some instances these are very safe seats, so I'm not sure the swings are going to be big enough, but it will. There's no doubt. I think when it comes to this next election, people will remember this because it has a sort of high symbolic value and it will come back to mind.
Parliament is discussing the bill and a result will be known in a couple of weeks. It's back to you.
Nelson, thank you. The Education Department is hoping to cut the number of full-time jobs by March next year as part of a voluntary targeted severance scheme. The program was announced back in September with hopes that it will fix the budget. Education Minister Sue Ellery remains firm that forced redundancies will not be part of the scheme and ensures the delivery of statutory obligations of providing high-quality education.
There's a lot of things we need to work through, and that's what we're doing now. I understand that there's uncertainty for staff and I want to bring that to an end as soon as I possibly can, but I just think it would be unfair to speculate about numbers.
The state government plans to outline its decision regarding the privatisation of the TAB after the Australian Competition Tribunal gave Tabcorp the go-ahead to purchase Tats Group. So far, $440,000 have been spent to fund preliminary advice on options for a potential privatisation of the TAB. But the state government is yet to publicly announce its plans. Liberal MP John McGrath says it's important to provide the industry with certainty and sustainability.
The government now needs to get a move on because this decision means that the Tabcorp will be the biggest operator in Australia. They will dominate the market, and if West Australia wants to continue to be a viable TAB, I think they've got to look seriously at it.
WA Police have targeted lead-foot drivers in a national day of action to cut speeding on the roads. Extra officers were out in force across Perth's road network with handheld radars and mobile speed cameras as part of Operation Safe Speed to curb road tolls.
We're targeting unsafe road user behaviours, in this case particularly speeding. It's intended to highlight the dangers and the increased risk caused by increased speed on our roads, and to also highlight enforcement efforts that WA Police is undertaking.
It was the first time WA Police ran the road blitz in the current format, which is expected to be implemented in the future.
Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe has refused to resign following a snap military coup, which threw the totalitarian state into more uncertainty. It comes after Mugabe and his wife were placed in house arrest after the military took over government offices, parliament buildings and state broadcaster. It's understood the military is against Grace Mugabe's rise as the future leader, with a former military Lieutenant Mnangagwa may become the new president. US President Donald Trump has thanked China for freeing his country's athletes after 3 basketball players were released for theft charges. This comes after Mr. Trump's visit to Beijing as he met with China President Xi Jinping, with the president personally requested Mr. Xi to free the players. It's understood that the players will meet the press this coming Wednesday.
And finally this week, with Christmas just around the corner, Perth CBD is geared up for the festive season with the Christmas Light Trail. Major landmarks including the St George's Cathedral, Cultural Centre, Mary Street Mall and Northbridge Piazza are filled with Christmas projections and LED lights, plus the giant Christmas tree on Elizabeth Quay.
We would love people every day, every night. They come to city not only view the lights, also to enjoy the atmosphere, because there's so many people here. And the food and the lovely Elizabeth Quay.
And that's our weekly news and current affairs. You can catch the latest news on our website and Facebook.
We'll be back in a week's time. Until then, have a good evening.